Hey, this is Shriyari from Mr. Phone, and Xiaomi recently launched the Xiaomi Mi A3 and Realme launched the Realme 5 Pro. Both of them only 1000 rupees apart in price, and which is why people actually wanted us to compare the camera. So here is a camera comparison between the Realme 5 Pro, the Xiaomi Mi A3, and we also added in the Realme X just for fun. So without any further ado, let's jump into this camera comparison. Before we jump into the video, don't forget to subscribe to the Mr. Phone channel and also hit the bell icon right next to it so that you get notified when we put out a whole new video. Now here are the camera specs of the three phones, the Realme 5 Pro, the Realme X and the Xiaomi Mi A3. You can actually see for yourself what all the specifications are. I'll actually not waste my time here, so you can actually pause the video if you want to see the specifications, but let's jump into the real fun stuff. Taking a look at this almost perfect flower for our first close-up shot, the Mi A3 seems to have done a phenomenal job with the color of the flower. The Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro are very good looking as well and are probably more appealing to a lot of people, but they have that orangish tint to the petals that the sunflower did not have. That said, let's look at details more importantly and note that all three smartphones use the same Sony IMX586 sensor to shoot the standard pictures. The details are unsurprisingly very similar on all three phones across the image, which makes it difficult to choose between them. That said, because of the better color treatment on the Mi A3 and a better contrast on the whole image, I think I'll pick the Mi A3 first, followed by the Realme 5 Pro and the Realme X. Now let's quickly move to this bright red flower, and again the same thing comes in. While all three of them take phenomenal pictures that any of you should be happy with, the Mi A3 just has a slightly more natural color tone to it and looks appealing. The details are phenomenal on all three, but I think Realme could bring the saturation down just a bit. That said, it's nothing you cannot change with a bit of editing. Also, because Realme has a chroma boost mode, I tried that and it does boost the colors even more, which is why I think that the standard pictures should be slightly less saturated. That said, for this image again, I picked the Mi A3 as the winner, closely followed by the Realme 5 Pro and the Realme X at the same point. Now move to daylight wide. Now the first thing is the great dynamic range on all three devices, but with the Realme's phone having just a bit of advantage over the Mi A3 with certain parts of the highlights and shadows. That said, the colors in the Mi A3 are a little more natural to what it actually looked like. The Realme's colors are saturated, but more importantly, the greens have just come out way too much. I would have liked the greens to stay slightly on the lower side, but that's generally how Realme actually processes their pictures. That's it, colors really depend on preference, so you might actually like the Realme's colors compared to the Mi A3. But what doesn't vary are details, so let's get into them. Now, as we saw in the previous pictures of all three phones, we have great details. The Mi A3 just seems to have slightly more resolved details in comparison. If you look at the leaves on the bush here, you'll realize that the difference is there, although very minute, but it is there. The contrast on Xiaomi's picture is actually something that makes it look more dynamic. Realme phones do need to work in that department. Now if you move to the top part of the picture in the center building, you can clearly see that the Mi A3 is falling behind in dynamic range. Also, I really like how the Realme 5 Pro sits right in between the Mi A3 and the Realme X in color tone. Or the color temperature of the whole picture. That said, if you look at the corner to corner details, you see how Mi A3 has actually controlled the image and has controlled the noise as well. That said, the Realme X is very good. So in this picture, I actually choose the Mi A3 mainly because of more resolution in the leaves and the smaller parts, and this is a wide image, that's how we go. With the Realme X closely following along with the Realme 5 Pro. Now move to portrait mode pictures. Now in these pictures, the first thing you'll notice is the color difference between the Xiaomi and the Realme phones. Now while the Realme's color might look appealing to many, the Mi A3 is actually closer to Ershad's face tone, and the thing is that you might like it or you might not like it. When Ershad looked at the pictures, he really didn't like how the Realme phones looked because he exactly knows what his skin color looks like and he preferred the Mi A2's image. Now there might be fairer skinned people who the red tint might look good at, but here it doesn't suit at all. Now coming to details, the Realme phones I love a lot. Not because they have more details, it's just that there seems to be very little to no over sharpening, whereas with Xiaomi you can clearly see the over sharpening at play here. Realme phones on the other hand are oozing with natural details. That said, moving towards the shirt, you can see that the Mi A3 is providing slightly more details. Now I am actually going to rank the Mi A3 and the Realme 5 Pro at the same point here. Now while I like the colors on the Mi A3, I actually like how the natural details on the Realme 5 Pro have come out, and also the cutout is more consistent on the Realme 5 Pro. So I'll give same points for the Mi A3 and the Realme 5 Pro and give second spot to the Realme X. Now let's move to the HDR shot. Now we've seen how Realme phones are super capable when it comes to dynamic range. Now here all three of them have done a great job, primarily also because the situation wasn't the hardest to get right. The Realme X does seem to have a slightly underexposed image, while the Realme 5 Pro and the Mi A3 look just perfect. I think Realme has done some great work in the 5 Pro because I thought since the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro have the exact same sensor and are being provided by the same brand, then the difference would be not noticeable at all. But I think you can see clearly how Realme has worked on the colors and tones as well, apart from other things. Now here I give the round to both the Realme 5 Pro and the Mi A3, with the Realme X coming in at a second spot. Now moving to selfies, selfie section has always been one where Realme phones cover up for any of the rounds that they've lost in the past, and this time it looks to be no different. The contrast ratio, the perceived details, most importantly the dynamic range on the Realme 5 Pro is just impossible. In the Realme 5 Pro image there seems to be some over sharpening going on the face, but it doesn't look bad. That said, I would have liked to see the artifacts a little toned down. What Xiaomi needs to do is maybe get some more contrast into the picture and work on the exposure of front camera, because I had issue in exposure in a few other pictures as well. The thing is that according to me, I think what Xiaomi does is clicks phenomenal pictures from the back camera, but the same face tones and the same colors are not brought to the front camera. When you look at Realme pictures, it's exactly the opposite. So if you look at the selfies, the color tones on the face, the dynamics on the face, it's just phenomenal. But when it goes to the back camera, it's a more flatter, redder looking image that comes out of the phones. So I think if both companies can find a way to just bring parity towards the picture, where the back camera and the front camera images look at least in color similar, at least in tones similar, then I think they would be spotless. Now moving to low light, without zooming in, the Realme phones have clearly clicked a brighter picture than the Xiaomi Mi A3 in this fairly low lit condition. Now from the looks of it, generally what happens between a Realme and a Xiaomi comparison is that while Xiaomi clicks a slightly darker picture, the details on the Xiaomi are more. When you crank up the ISO on Realme phones, which is why they have a brighter image, you lose a lot of details. That's it in this one, that's not the case. When you zoom into the picture, you'll see that Realme has details that are equally as good as the Mi A3 and are sharper in some other areas. Also, the image overall looks good. Of course, the color tone or the color temperature of the Xiaomi Mi A3 is actually more natural than the other two, but overall images easily look better on the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro. I'll give equal points to the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro, with the Xiaomi Mi A3 closely following. Now let's look at this night mode image again. What we will see is that the light flare has been controlled perfectly by the Realme 5 Pro. The Mi A3 has done a good job. The Realme X struggled with focusing on the image. That said, we are actually here to look at the night mode image of this, and we turn to night mode. What we see here is that the light flare has been handled phenomenally here. All the areas where there were bright lights and things were being blown out has been brought down with night mode. You can see over sharpening also happening in a lot of these areas, and I think overall all these pictures look good. That said, Realme's night mode has done a better job than the Xiaomi Mi A3. And if you especially look at this area, which was very interesting to me, if you look at the scar on the rightmost part of this photo, you can see that the number plate area is very dark. When you look at the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro image, you can actually read out the exact number plate of that car if you want. Now when you look at low light selfies from the Xiaomi Mi A3, the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro, now without light, there is barely any difference between the three phones, which is why we now turn to flash. So all these phones use screen flash. They do not have a separate flash module on the front. Now what happens here is that there are very different images. Generally, the images from the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro look very similar, but here there is a difference. Now, the Realme X uses a very white light to light up the face, and there is this cool tone because of the AMOLED display, which is why you can actually see that my face looks slightly cooler. Also because I'm cool, but also because the light shining on my face is like that. Xiaomi on the other hand, what they do is actually have a slightly warmer light to it. That said, that doesn't shine through here either. My color of the face is actually closest in the Realme 5 Pro with a bit of a green tint, but the face hasn't been illuminated very well and the hair is actually gone. You cannot see the hair. So between the Mi A3 and the Realme X is what I have to choose, and I can't actually put a finger on which one I perfectly like. So because Xiaomi has actually illuminated the face completely and evenly. That's it, because the Realme X's image actually looks much more appealing than either of those images. And if I had to post a picture, I'd easily choose the Realme X. Then I'll give the Realme X the first spot, followed by the Mi A3 and the Realme 5 Pro coming in at last. Now we'll talk about the wide angle camera on the Mi A3 and the Realme 5 Pro. The Realme X does not have a wide angle camera. So that's one disadvantage on the Realme X if you want to find that. That's why the cameras on the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro are pretty similar. But this is one thing that the Realme 5 Pro has clearly an advantage, which is one is a wide angle camera and another one is a macro lens that you get with the Realme 5 Pro. Now looking at the wide angle shots between the Mi A3 and the Realme 5 Pro, the Mi A3 has a greenish warm tint to the picture, which wasn't exactly how it looked. The Realme 5 Pro looks absolutely stunning with its color. The blue sky is actually slightly more saturated, but it still looks very, very good. Now, if we zoom into the picture, the wide angle camera on either of these phones do not really have any details going on. The Xiaomi does seem to have more contrast. That is also because it's slightly underexposed in the image department. That said, there is no perceivable difference between the wide angle camera of the Mi A3 and the wide angle camera of the Realme 5 Pro. Now, because of a better color on the Realme 5 Pro and also because of the dynamic range that the Realme 5 Pro is showing here, I think I'll choose the Realme 5 Pro to be number one, followed by the Mi A3. Now all the pictures are done, let's move on towards videos, and first we take a look at the 4K footage using the rear camera. Now all of them shoot 4K at 30 FPS, and what you see here is that the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro look exactly same. Now probably that is because 4K footages aren't graded straight out of a phone, probably why they look very similar, because they have the exact same sensor shooting that video. They handle exposure well and better than the Mi A3 for sure, and surprisingly have better audio. Mi A3's audio is actually generally not bad. You'll see that in the selfie video and the 1080p footage, but here there seems to be some software bug, which is why only one channel from the Mi A3 is actually shooting. So there's some software bug happening.
Hey, this is Srihari from Mr. Phone, and right now we are taking 4K 30 FPS samples from the Realme X. And as I walk around, you can see if there's stabilization in the video, which I know for a fact there is electronic stabilization. And as I turn around and there's a bright background behind me, let's see if the cameras can expose me well as well as me.
But when the background becomes very bright, that's when the Realme phones do a better job. And for the 4K footage, that is why I'll actually choose the Realme 5 Pro and the Realme X at the number one spot, followed by the Mi A3. Now let's move to the Full HD samples of the Mi A3, the Realme 5 Pro and the Realme X. Now just like we saw in the last footage, what we see here is that the colors on the Realme 5 and the Realme X are very, very similar. Now that is of course because of Realme's processing. There is a bit of a color difference on the Mi A3. It's slightly warmer and there is a greenish tint to the image as well. The Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro actually look really, really good with the colors. That said, the audio on the Mi A3 is actually very, very good compared to the Realme 5 and the Realme 5 Pro. As I said in the 4K footage, there was some software bug happening, but here the audio of the Mi A3 is absolutely perfect.
Hey, this is Srihari from Mr. Phone, and right now we're shooting 1080p footage at 30 FPS using the Xiaomi Mi A3. And as I walk around, you'll see if there's any stabilization, what the audio quality is enough, if it's recording sound well, and if the exposure handling is well, and there is a bright background behind.
Now if we talk about stabilization, the stabilization on all three phones is equally good. There is literally no difference that I can find between the stabilization of the Mi A3, of the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro. On the Mi A3, there was just 1 or 2 points where the exposure is actually changing very drastically, just like we saw in the Poco F1. Of course, that was at a much larger scale. This is not as dramatic or as noticeable, but it is there, which is why I'll actually choose the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro to go in the number one spot, followed by the Xiaomi Mi A3. Now coming to selfie video, the Realme 5 Pro comes in already with a big advantage, and that advantage is that there is EIS and stabilization on the Realme 5 Pro's front camera. One of the very few phones coming under 20,000 with stabilization on the front camera, but that stabilization does come with a crop which the Mi A3 and the Realme X do not have. That said, if we talk about the image quality, the dynamic range issue on the front camera is something that's clearly visible on the Mi A3 here. Other two phones also have slightly blown out images, but if you see here, even when the background behind me is not that bright, the background behind me is the building, is my office building. You can still see how the shirt on the Mi A3 is completely overexposed. It's completely white. You cannot see anything on that shirt. And I think that is one of the big things that I saw with Mi A3. There are exposure issues on the front camera, and I hope that Xiaomi find a way to fix it. Coming to the color tones, the Mi A3 this time has actually gone for a warmer color tone, while the Realme 5 Pro and the Realme X have a slightly more natural color tone. Now, I don't know how this happens. Xiaomi Mi A3 mostly chooses to be natural, but here you can see how the Realme 5 Pro is more natural and the Xiaomi actually has a warmer face tone. But that said, in selfie video, because of EIS, the Realme 5 Pro easily gets #1 spot. The #2 spot is actually between the Realme X and the Xiaomi Mi A3. Realme X, of course, has better exposure and a better color in the video, but Xiaomi Mi A3's audio is almost spotless among these three phones, which is why I'll keep the Realme X and the Xiaomi Mi A3 at the #2 spot.
Hey, this is Sri from Mr. Phone, and right now I'm shooting front camera footage using the Realme X and the Redmi 5 Pro. Let's see if there's stabilization in this video. Let's see what the audio quality sounds like, and I think you can see Airshad in the background somewhere here, but so maybe there is stabilization, and we'll of course see how it looks, how the exposure handling is. And
now, with the scoring of these three phones, the Realme 5 Pro actually comes out on top just by 1 point. So the scoring is 32 points for the Realme 5 Pro and 31 points each for the Mi A3 and the Realme X. Now, this difference is actually non-existent, and what I'll tell you is that even though this score shows the Realme 5 Pro as the winner, if there is a margin of error, that can be added here. And what I can tell you is that all three cameras are equally good. There are just different areas where the Mi A3 is good and other areas where the Realme 5 Pro and the Realme X shine. Now, how to know that? Now, if you're someone who shoots a lot of landscapes, who shoots wide shots a lot, or maybe takes even daylight close-up shots, if you take pictures of things around you, then what you'll realize is that the Xiaomi Mi A3 is actually a very good camera to do that. When wide shots come in, Xiaomi has always done that, and it is doing that even at this point. If you're someone who wants great selfies out of their phone, selfie performance is actually something that the Realme X and the Realme 5 Pro both are very, very good at. The Realme X is, of course, a few updates ahead of the Realme 5 Pro, which is why the selfie performance is just slightly better in a few areas on the Realme X. That said, the dynamic range on the Realme 5 Pro is actually even still better than the Realme X. The nightscape mode on the Realme phones is very, very good. Then we go on to video, and I think in video, the phone that I would choose as the winner between these three phones is the Realme 5 Pro. That is also probably where the Realme 5 Pro took the lead, because it, of course, has a great back camera both for 4K and 1080p footages. You can choose between 60 FPS or 30 FPS for 1080p, but what you also get is EIS on the front camera as well. But in a nutshell, what I can say is that all three cameras are super capable, and the choice of the phone to buy will actually depend more on the phone now, because the cameras are so damn good. You can't go wrong with any of them. And I guess with that, we come to an end of this video. Thank you so much for watching this comparison. I hope you liked this. Let me know what you think of this in the comment section below. But with that, I'll leave you to it. Thank you so much for watching. This is Sri from Mr. Phone, and I'll catch you in the next one.